you ever wondered how they started out, before we had all the electric ink machines and all that? Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about the methods of tattooing, the history of tattooing, and tattooing today. So to start out, we've got the methods. So they had simple needles back then. That's one of the two methods. They also used bamboo handles. They would sharpen the tips of bamboo into very fine, not super fine, but relatively fine points. And then they also use gunpowder as dye, which you can imagine is not very safe. So simple needles, tabori needles are what they used in Japan, is what they were called. And then we have the modern day stick and poke method, where you would take a needle, you would wrap dental floss around it to retain the ink, and then you would stick it into your skin one at a time. And then certain Indian tribes would use needles as well in their tribal tattoos. So following the example of other nations of Brazil who tattooed themselves with thorns or pierced their nose. Yep, so those were also another method, as by the Dr. Tim Thurn. So now moving on to bamboo handles. So it's a handle crafted from wood with the end sharpened. And it would, no needles, just sharpened bamboo. And it would be punted into the skin very, very hard, repeatedly. Often you would use like a hammer on the end, so you would hold it, and then you would just go along hammering whatever you wanted into the skin. And yeah, it was very painful. And it took thousands of hours to master, and thousands of hours to actually do a complete set. And bamboo tattooing is both fascinating to watch and extremely difficult to master, which, yeah, you can imagine. And then I actually did the stick and poke method myself. So on the left, I used a flame to sterilize the needle. I attached the needle to a pencil as a type of hold, and then I wrapped the needle into floss to retain the ink, so it wouldn't have to go back and forth every couple seconds, just every couple 30 seconds, I guess. And then I used Indian ink as a type of dye. And that's my tattoo right there.
What?
Right?
It's a ghost from Mario.
I was like, did that hurt?
Yeah, it hurt a lot. It turned out alright, I think. I had to go over it a couple times.
What the?
Yeah.
I think he went to his presentation.
I know.
Most
dedication.
dedication.
Like, you did what?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I did it myself. I'm like, I thought maybe somebody would learn to crochet.
Yeah, so I didn't use gunpowder dye, I used ink, but yeah, which is a lot safer than gunpowder dye. But gunpowder dye, it was popular in Alaskan culture. It dyed the skin a dark black, but more like a dark black, but I guess kind of like a lighter black. I'm not sure why I said dark black. Charcoal was another substitute for gunpowder. That would make it a lot darker. And they tattooed it by entering an awl or needle under the skin and drawing it out, immediately rubbing powdered charcoal into the wounds, so they wouldn't actually attach the charcoal to the needle. They would just tattoo themselves with the needle and then just rub it on your skin, which, yeah, not very sanitary. Finally, the history. Yakuza tattoo method is one that's pretty popular in media and culture. Alaskan method, and finally a tribal method. So the Yakuza, typical Japanese tattoos were used. They were called irizumi or tabori. And then the tattoo artist is called the horishi. And typically the Yakuza would entrust one single tattoo artist for their entire clan. I'm not sure what you call a Yakuza group. And they often depict stories of ancient myths. And the Yakuza are very professional. They never want their tattoos on their hands, their neck, their face. They always want them to be covered up. They believe that tattoos should not be seen unless at the time of burial. The tattoos are to show that they have the strength to help the weak, but doesn't need to be made public, and that is by Horishi III, which is a very popular tattoo artist in Japan for the Yakuza. And these are some images of popular Yakuza tattoos that they would get. And then here we have one of a Yakuza boss. He was actually in hiding for a very long time. But then they took images of his back tattoo. As you can see, it's very intricate and detailed. And finally, Alaskan tattoos. a lot of them are more typically the chin tattoos. They would be inscribed on women's skin by women's hands, so women would do them on other women. And they commemorate various achievements and points in your life for women. And it was a traditional hand poke method with a needle. And it was very sacred in Alaskan culture. And the tattoos are a re-articulation of native heritage and are borrowing stylistic elements from various Inuit cultures. And then here we have an example of one of those chin tattoos. And finally, tribal tattoos. The European Balkan tribe was one I read about. They heavily stressed the quality of courage. They would use their tattoos to represent that. Tattooing is a very prevalent custom in the Balkan tribe, and many legends and stories regard birds in their tattoos. Tattooing is a very prevalent custom in many of the Balkan tribes, and for these tattoos, marks are not idle decorations, but they have very deep significance. And then finally, I have tattooing today. So a lot of people use a tattoo gun. They don't normally go for the hand poke method because that's very painful and very doesn't look that great. But yeah, pain and gain. Tattooing is very painful and it can be very expensive, but a lot of them can look really, really good. It's become a lot more mainstream in the past couple of years. So the tattoo gun, it's completely electric a lot of the time. You just have a foot pedal all the time or a hand button. Pushing a button or a foot pedal. The foot pedal kind of makes it easier to do. You don't have to do two things at once with your hand. And needles extrude and contract thousands of times per second, or per minute, I guess. So it would take the ink automatically into the skin. And it allows the needle to pierce the skin calmly and smoothly, very quickly. So get a nice smooth line. So you have pain and gain. The advanced technology allows for very intricate and complicated designs. I have this one here. It's not very complicated or intricate, but it is a very smooth and clean line. They're not really that painful as far as tattoos go. I guess it's a lot better to get a typical tattoo than a stick poke. They're a lot less painful. But it is still very painful in some more sensitive areas. Like I know the wrist was the pretty sensitive one. The arm is not that bad. A lot of the time I feel like thicker fat or flesh, it's not as bad. And it's not as expensive as traditional tattoos. A lot of the traditional tattooers, like the Horishi I was mentioning, they can get very, very expensive. But they are still very, very expensive. Full body tattoos can cost at least 20,000 pounds. It can take up to 6 years to complete. That's from Remy from Super Prof magazine. And finally, the mainstream culture.